All right, let's see. We've got a couple of atheist callers as well as a theist. I want to get at least one atheist caller on today. Yadaira in St. Cloud.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Thanks for waiting so patiently.
Hi. No problem. Okay, so I originally had two different questions, and then Jeff got on the phone. I'm technically still a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I haven't sent in my letter, but I'm an atheist. That's what I identify as. I'm still kind of transitioning between theism and atheism.
I wish we could have put you and Jeff on. We technically we could have.
I would have loved that. I was over here screaming my head off.
Yeah, we have that capability. It's just that I didn't know you were on the line.
Oh my gosh, I would have loved that. But I wrote down a couple points that I wanted to touch on that Jeff said, because I heard what he was saying and I was literally screaming. So first of all, the Book of Mormon play is hilarious. Definitely check it out. I'm going to actually watch it live in a couple months. Really hilarious, and that's actually probably how my doubt started, which is kind of funny, was watching the Book of Mormon and being like, okay, they're not really saying anything that's not true. It's just the way they're saying it is really ridiculous. And then I was trying to be a better Mormon, study the church, and realize it's horrible and not true at all, and Joseph Smith's a fraud.
And when you talk about their by their fruits you'll know them, which exists in various Christian doctrines. I love the fact that, colloquially we refer to it as the Mormons. Jeff correctly identified it as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, often just abbreviated LDS. But then there's also the FLDS, the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. And that's where you have the polygamy and the child brides. What's that?
Exactly. The polygamy, child brides, incest, a whole bunch of crazy stuff. And when I was a member and people would be like, oh, you still practice polygamy, I'd be like, oh, but they're not real Mormons. Yeah. And now I just kind of laugh when I hear people use but they're not real Christians, not real Muslims argument, because I'm like, at the fundamental, they kind of are. So, but what he was saying about faith in the spirit and how it feels like I was indoctrinated. So, for me, when I was growing up, I was like, oh, the spirit is this magical feeling. It's not. It's really just what you make up in your own head. That's really what it is. I thought I was really, feeling the spirit when I'd be, praying and asking for guidance and stuff. But in reality, I made all those decisions on my own because I knew it was good enough for me. But it kind of helped me, shift the burden, shift the worry and shift the guilt to, this imaginary being in the sky. So
when I was asking him about, can you believe false things based on faith or internal things, how many young girls are absolutely in love with and think they're going to marry Justin Bieber?
Exactly.
It can't all be right.
Whenever you were talking about the faith thing, and he said, Allah is not a real God, there are members of the church who will tell you, oh, Allah is the same God that we worship, just under a different name. Yep. People manipulate the doctrine however they want. And a lot of what people don't realize is that Mormons are low-key polytheistic. They really do believe that there are multiple gods, but that there's one penultimate God, and that's the one we need to worship. Because in Mormon doctrine, we all, if you don't know, it says that when you die, if you are faithful, you get to be a god, and you get to have planets. And I thought that was so cool as a 12-year-old kid. And now I look back and I'm like, wow, how did I believe this stuff?
And my planet will have unicorns.
Exactly. I was like, my planet's going to have dinosaurs and people living at the same time. That's just how it's going to go. But they're going to be nice dinosaurs.
But if you're a woman, right, you just get to bear children for the god, right? My wife grew up in Utah, and I've heard some stories, but it didn't seem like the women got a very good deal out of it.
I think that one thing about this doctrine, one thing about this particular doctrine of getting to be a god, that I don't know why it doesn't resonate with Mormons more clearly. The book I'm currently working on is called If I Were God. And I talk about this in there, about what kind of world would you make if you were in fact God? So we get into the problem of evil, or egregious evil. Hey, on my planet, cancer will not be able to affect children. I mean, I would love to hey, my planet's just not going to have cancer. But at a minimum, you could say cancer won't affect anyone under the age of 17.
Right.
And if that's the case, then does that not mean that I am better and more moral than the God that is currently in control of the planet that I inhabit?
Exactly. That's what I've been telling. I've only come out to a few of my very, very close friends and my boyfriend. I haven't come out to my family or anything like that because they're all still very, very devout, very, very Mormon, especially my dad and my stepmother. But the people I have told, I'm just like, this stuff doesn't make sense. Like, why would this all-powerful God, let there be wars and famine and people and like children dying of cancer and leukemia and things like that? Like, that was the first thing that I was like, you know what, maybe this doesn't make sense. Maybe I need to look into this more. And it all started with like just little bits of doubt here and there. And then I saw the Book of Mormon play and I was like, holy cow. And then actually my boyfriend's an atheist. And he would sometimes play y'all's show in the background when we would hang out. And I kind of would start listening to some of the arguments that these theist callers were making. And I was like, holy cow, that's the argument I've made. And it sounds absolutely ridiculous. And I think Stephanie, the first caller, was talking about cognitive dissonance and how atheists have cognitive dissonance. But in my mind, the only people showing their cognitive dissonance around here is theists because, they believe in this holy book that says that we should stone and kill homosexuals and women who talk back to men. Like in Stephanie's religion, that her whole conversation would be deemed inappropriate by many Christians.
Oh, good point.
So, yeah. And
like go ahead.
No, and the other aspect of this, I forgot. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of funny that, especially being raised in the Mormon church, I definitely will admit firsthand that I had tons of cognitive dissonance, and I was trying to justify how I've always loved science, and I would try to justify how evolution, I'm like, there's so much proof, so it has to be a part of God's plan, or else he wouldn't have done it this way. And I would try to justify, like, oh, the universe is expanding because that's just the way God wanted it to be. So I was, just trying to... I'm actually studying astrophysics, and that's another reason why I've kind of lost my faith. And I'm just like, no, that's not how it works. There's not, as far as I know, there's not a God saying that the universe is going to expand now just because I say it is.
Yeah, well played. I will say that I didn't actually address Stephanie's point on cognitive dissonance because there was so much of it apparent in the discussion. But I will say that the only way you can have cognitive dissonance is to be simultaneously holding contradictory positions. And you know what the cure for that is? Acknowledging that the right answer is, I don't know. The very thing she objects to makes you immune on those subjects to cognitive dissonance. I cannot have cognitive dissonance when I'm not holding a positive position towards something. But I wanted to get to your question because you're kind of looking for, help transitioning or whatever else.
So I have lots of friends and family who are still very active members of the church. I have some who are just active Christians and other religious beliefs. And I was just kind of wondering, what to expect when having these conversations with like my still very, very devout friends and family. How can I go about being like, look, this is why I don't believe and this is why I don't, or maybe, why shouldn't you, but you shouldn't believe this either.
Yeah. So the first recommendation I have is Greta Christina's book, Coming Out, The Reasons Why and How to Do It. That's roughly the title, but coming out as an atheist is the theme. You can just search for Greta Christina. She interviewed a bunch of people. The thing is, everybody's experience is going to be a little different. I know people who have lost their entire social structure. Their families have been kicked out. They've lost all their friends, and it is awful. And some people have suffered from what Dr. Marlene Winnell has called religious trauma syndrome. The thing that I recommend is, I don't see any reason to make a big deal out of it. To do a sit down. Okay, I have an important announcement. I don't believe. Instead, if you continue being you, and then gradually become a little more open and honest, so that when the questions start coming of hey, do you still believe this? You can say, yeah, I haven't believed this for a while. I'm still thinking on things, but I don't believe that. That's a lot less terrifying to people than saying, I'm an atheist and you're wrong.
I'm an atheist, hear me roar.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I just had one other question. I know, the ACA has been around for a long, long time, but do you have any tips on starting like a smaller community, like in your own cities, for example? Like I know, like obviously like Facebook would be probably the first facet, but do you have any other tips on that?
ACA started just with a few people, a newspaper ad, and some people getting together in a bagel shop, and that's kind of how it started. And you look for like-minded people. You just start meeting regularly if you can, and and go from there. And
I'd look to see if there's already groups in your area.
I'm sure there is.
It may take some
there's a
effort.
couple. They're still really small, but I'm trying to inject my way in there.
Yeah.
You can look at meetup.com. There's generally free thought groups everywhere. They might have different names.
Yeah, there's Central Minnesota Freethinkers I found with a quick Google search here.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I'm a part of that group, actually, so
Okay.
I'll have to hop in too. All right, well, thanks so much, guys. I'm a huge fan of the show. I've been watching older episodes, too, and it's just great to catch up on all the stuff I've missed out on. So thanks a lot, and thanks for letting me on the show. Big fan. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Yadaira.